Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome back to Tiny Tiger Collective. Today, I thought I would bring you a video in which I show you some of the different ways that planning and journaling have not so much taken up time, but has given me more time and more peace in my very busy life as a mum of an energetic, almost 3-year-old toddler who also works full-time as an academic teaching the sociology of work at a business school. In the planner community, it's not unusual to see Hobonichi's traveler's notebooks overflowing with the most beautiful decorative spreads. People add illustrations, stickers, exquisitely neat handwriting, and occasionally you find in the comment section people who deride those practices as self-indulgent wastes of time that truly have no place in a functional and productive life. But those sorts of comments often miss the point that planning and journaling can serve very different needs depending on the seasons of our life. I want to talk through the different ways that planning and journaling have helped me achieve more calm and peace. Specifically, I think a lot of people, when they think about planning, jump to the assumption that all planning is about productivity. And certainly in my life, I've benefited from using planning systems in order to create greater clarity and organization in what would otherwise be a frenetic and chaotic schedule. I wanted to share, first and foremost, my work planner, which as of the start of 2025, I've been using in these Hobonichi weeks with an Unsoro Bijits Kai cover. It actually took me many months of experimentation, and it's very much still an evolving process. But this is an example where I can use planners to give me extra clarity, articulate my priorities, and track my workload over the week to lighten my cognitive load and free up my time and my energy for more focused, deep work. So my work planner has evolved over time through small tweaks and refinements that work for me, the nature of my work, and the nature of my brain. The way that I've currently designed this system is I start off each spread by drawing a light pencil line down the left-hand column of the left-hand page. On the left-hand side, I note down all of my meetings and events. This is a very busy teaching semester for me, so I also note my 2 undergraduate seminars. And this week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I will teach my new cohort of postgraduates through an intensive weekend of full days of classes. I have meetings with colleagues, as well as a research seminar on Wednesday that I've noted down, so that as the week goes on, I will cross off all of the meetings, events, and classes that I've completed. What has worked really well for me and only takes a few seconds at the start of my workday is that I'll begin by noting down 1 to 3, and really no more than that, of my work priorities. So this week, I have 2 priorities. The first is to survive my intensive teaching. I usually find that I lose my voice by the end of the weekend. So every semester, I've gotten better at pacing myself and managing my energy levels so that I'm not burnt out by the end of Sunday. Unfortunately, due to deadlines out of my control, a colleague and I are also looking to apply for some grant funding. And there are a few hoops that we need to jump through with a fairly urgent timeline. So, normally, if I was teaching intensively for 3 days straight, that would be my only priority for the work week. But because we need to get a move on with deadlines, I am meeting a colleague later this afternoon and we're going to scope out our grant application essentials. And then I need to submit that to my faculty before my teaching begins on Friday. I've received many comments when I've shared my work journal process, and so many of you recommended that I try a to do list known as the Alastair Method. And I thank you all so much for that genius recommendation. I used to keep the right hand column for all of my to dos, but it would very quickly get messy when I inevitably needed to defer work tasks to the following days when I ran out of time. There's also not a lot of space in each day, which means that while some days might be blank, other days I would struggle to find enough lines to note down all of my to dos. And it very quickly defied the point of having an organization system that helped me see at a quick glance what tasks I had on day by day. And instead, what I found has been a much more organized system in which I note down the days of the week and then I keep the running to do list over on the left. I make a little dot for the days that I either know or project will be when I need to do each task. So, teaching, for example, that's immovable. My class is on a Wednesday, Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whether I like it or not. That's been scheduled. So, that's when it's happening. But things like needing to print handouts, I don't technically have to do that on Wednesday. I can also do that later this afternoon if I wanted. But making a dot at the most reasonable or efficient day lets me see at a glance what I can expect. And then as I do them, I will check them off with a cross. It's also really helpful for me to break down tasks into smaller subtasks. So, here, while teaching can encompass actually the face to face walking into a classroom and delivering my seminar, there are, of course, smaller but very vital tasks that I need to do to support the teaching. So, for example, I need to make sure that I've printed off handouts for all of my students to complete their activities this week. I need to order a case study from Harvard Business Publishing that my postgraduate students will be able to complete on our Sunday morning class this week. And I need to create a new Notion project file for my postgraduate students. So, those are three vital subtasks that I need to complete this week. And I put them underneath teaching with a small indent to show that they're related to the broader task of teaching. Similarly, I have to write the expression of interest for our grant on Wednesday. But associated with that task is that I will then need to send it to my Associate Dean of Research. And I'm projecting that I can have an extra day to sleep on what I've written, give it a quick copy edit with fresh pair of eyes, and I'll send it off to him on Thursday before my teaching schedule kicks into full swing that Friday. Throughout the week, I've also found it really helpful to have a running charter of my weekly wins. So far, I've already added two, even though it's only Tuesday morning as I'm filming this. So, the first is I'm feeling myself reigniting my passion for research. I'm feeling more motivated and fired up to start new projects and wrap up old ones. The second is something more of a gratitude than a win. But this semester, especially, I've had these intimate cohorts that I've been able to quickly learn their names, their interests, their aspirations, and it's always less emotionally taxing to teach a smaller class, not to mention having drastically decreased administrative workload with fewer students. So I'm already feeling really optimistic about this semester. This is some of the ways in which a simple work journal has helped me create so much more time and ease during my work week. One thing that has worked really well for me in the past is time blocking. But I confess that I'm still refining what time blocking looks like in analog form. The easiest and most functional way for me to time block is using a digital calendar where I can draft out a week or a month at a time, but then I can very easily move tasks around and change things as my actual day to day plays out. When I've tried using my Hobonichi cousin planner, the first mistake that I made was falling in love with the most incredible Hobonichi cousin content creators like Helen from Coffee Monsters Co. or Lauren from Theory of Lauren, who create something akin to a weekly schedule and something akin to memory keeping, where they have beautiful records of everything that they did in any given week, interspersed with beautiful handwriting and stickers. When I bought this Hobonichi cousin here in my beloved Yumi Kitagishi letter cover, I bought this back in 2024, April the 1st, as a spring start cousin. I immediately attempted to emulate my most favorite content creators. And you'll see here in my neatest handwriting, penned with, at the time, my brand new Pilot Vanishing Point in black wood and inked with platinum carbon black, I tracked my sleep, the things I was reading, watching, and listening that week, and then meticulously created records of what I did throughout my day, the places that I went and saw, when I put my son down for a nap, when I fed him dinner and got him ready for bedtime, when I was able to have private moments to steal away and journal in this brand new book. And then wherever possible, I put decorative stickers to represent all the lovely things that I got up to. So back in April 2024, I was actually traveling through Japan for my first ever family holiday with our son, who was around 20 months old at the time. So that Sunday, we went to Asakusa Temple and there were cherry blossoms lining the streets. And so I put down this cherry blossom sticker that I think I bought from a 100 yen shop to commemorate that incredible and magical day that we spent together. I also experimented with logging the high and low temperature that's in Celsius for my American friends who might be thinking, oh my God, were you freezing to death? As well as a little icon to indicate if it was sunny, cloudy, or raining. And I confess, as beautiful as this spread looks, and as much as it makes my heart happy to look at it now, this was really not sustainable for someone who then had to crash back into reality when I returned to Australia, and full time work, full time caregiving, all of that came to a head. And I realized that I simply did not have the time to maintain those kinds of beautiful spreads. And you see that things became very, very sparse by September. One thing that I've been experimenting with in the past couple of weeks was developed in collaboration with Jen, whose YouTube channel From Jen has given me so much comfort and joy over the last couple of years. It was actually in the comment section of one of her videos in which she showcased how she uses time blocking in her traveler's notebook that we got talking about the struggles that I've had time blocking in an analog system. And she suggested a great idea to pencil in the plan first and then using a pen to write on top what is actually done each day. The downside to this is you can see the spread is nowhere near as visually arresting as the aesthetic spreads that I was creating in the footsteps of my favorite content creators. But because I knew that this wasn't at all sustainable for me, at least in this season of my life, to devote that much time, I have now experimented with what is functional, but maybe not so pretty. So what I've been doing is using my Midori orange pencil to block out my week at the start of the week. So I've got my 3 days of intensive teaching, my seminars for my undergraduates, and where I fit in my journaling and my daily walks throughout. And then as each week passes through, I'm then able to use my pen to then record what actually happened on each of those days. So this looks extremely messy, but what this represented was that originally I had planned from 9 to 11 to do teaching prep so that 11 to 1 I can go into my seminar prepared. But what I actually ended up doing was coming into work about half an hour early to get more teaching prep done so that I was able to fit in a meeting with a colleague to discuss a unique situation with my student and how we could support her to balance her work and her study. And then after my meeting with her, I spent half an hour drafting a comprehensive email to the student, letting her know what we could do. I also had to insert a half hour there to answer some emails, and then I could spend the remaining time that I had originally blocked to script and prepare for some videos, including this one that I am sharing with you. So as the day by day goes on this week, I'll be able to fill all of this out. So I'm using the blank spreads in this old Hobonichi cousin because I don't want this beautiful Tomoe River paper to go to waste. So yes, it says March 2025, but this is what I'm using for this week. So I'm thinking I'll try to commit to this approach, even though I feel very wobbly at the moment, but I'll try and commit for at least a month and I can report back and see if there is a system, perhaps tweaked and refined over those 4 weeks, that I could adapt and use should I choose to buy a Hobonichi cousin, as I have in mind to do in 2026. The other thing that I wanted to add is that depending on the season of my life, I've also needed to create new daily habits. And while there is absolutely no reason why daily habits can't go into any notebook, the example that I have to share with you comes from my Hobonichi weeks that I've been keeping for my health and wellness tracker since the start of the year in my unique Hitakishi beautiful wallpaper design. This cover just makes me so happy. And when I saw it in Hobonichi's lineup at the end of last year, I knew at a glance that it was love at first sight, and I couldn't think of a more fitting cover to use as my health and wellness tracker. I should also say that the idea for a health and wellness tracker and much of this system follows in the footsteps of Alison from Little Coco Studio. Her detailed, comprehensive videos about how she has used a Hobonichi Weeks for her health and wellness tracker last year as well as this year have been my template for creating this system, which has been working really well for me. So, throughout the different seasons of my life, I've had needs to invite different activities and priorities into my everyday life. About 8 years ago, I was burning myself out at work and I traveled overseas 4 times by August. And I ended up sustaining a lower back injury and I was left with chronic pain and inflammation for a whole year. What I found was that my body needed regular movement to stay strong and healthy. And after a lot of physiotherapy and consultation, I learned that just having a 30-minute walk every day, or at least a few times a week, was enough to completely heal my inflammation. And although my back pain flares up from time to time, it is nowhere near the intensity and regularity that it used to be. So I make sure that among my daily habits, walking is one of the ones that I don't let go no matter what. I also have created a habit around journaling. And while I don't tend to have time to do that on the weekends when I'm spending time with my family, I keep it as a running habit so that I'm able to build a little bit of time, even if it's only 20 minutes to update my trackers during the work week. In other seasons of my life, I might be trying to improve my sleep. So I try to keep a closer eye on my caffeine intake, on my anxiety, on my mood, as well as tracking instances of insomnia itself. And I've got my little sleep tracker chart down at the bottom, which I've moved from my Hobonichi cousin into this health and wellness planner at the start of the year. And sometimes those are what I focus on in order to get my sleep back on track. Other times, it might not necessarily be the health and wellness that are the key priority in my life. If I feel like I've got a strong enough handle on my health, then perhaps in other seasons of my life, productivity will be one. And I will easily be able to add to this system, let's say, the number of Pomodoros that I do each day, or checking off the days of the week that I think I achieved deep work. So this system really allows me the flexibility to adapt my priorities depending on the needs. So talking about adapting my journaling and my planning to the needs of my life, I've now spoken about how I make more time, energy, and calm for greater productivity in my day-to-day life. I also want to share the times in my life where I've not so much needed more productivity to get things done, but when I've needed more calm. So before I arrived at my current university, I was working at a very toxic institution that had rampant bullying and unspoken values around hyperproductivity, competition, and overwork. Because of that very damaging culture, I really needed spaces for healing, rest, and joy. Even though my current university is so much more supportive and caring, I have vowed never to let myself slip into burnout ever again. So when I notice that my work stress might be running high, certainly a clear yet not too laborious work planner is exactly what I need to free up that cognitive load and to focus on my priorities. But equally important is for me to take care of my heart and my mind. And one of the ways that I've been able to do that is to take 15-20 minutes at the start of every day. I will draw a tarot card that will give me a little bit of guidance as to what I could welcome more into my life every day. I will then set what my intention is. So that could be the one priority focus, the one thing that I get done that will make me feel like I have had a successful day. And indeed, sometimes that might be my work priorities, but when I need more calm and peace, it's often something like a priority to rest. So, for example, today, though being a Tuesday, is a day that I'm going to take off as time off in lieu for my intensive teaching weekend. So, I talk about how I'm going to find time for rest and joy, but also I have made a special exception today, and I'm going to meet with my colleague for an hour in the afternoon to talk about our grant. But writing it down for me solidifies my focus for resting and restoring my energies before my intensive teaching. But also, it hedges against me slipping into guilt when I meet with my colleague because I have explicitly articulated that as a priority. The next thing that I will write is a mantra. Here I've written, peace is present here and everywhere, in ourselves, in everything we do and see. And that is from Thich Nhat Hanh. I used to joke a lot about how my planner systems were a little bit chaotic and I wasn't sure what would work for me. And I've had 2 years where I've experimented, first last year with a one book system, which didn't really work, and this year experimenting with multi-book systems, which also has been a little bit onerous or a little bit too onerous for me to stay on top of. And I kept saying that I was chasing planner peace. Earlier this year, when I read Thich Nhat Hanh's beautiful and wise works around mindfulness, I realized that I don't have to chase peace. I can choose to cultivate peace. So that has been a mantra that I've come back to whenever I felt like I was losing grasp of that knowledge. Last but not least, I'll write down one thing I'm grateful for on each day. So here I shared in more detail that I have been so grateful for my smaller class sizes because I've already gotten to know my undergraduate students. I've understood a little bit about their life story and their aspirations for this subject, as well as their future career. And that allows me to be a more present and attuned educator. The last thing that I wanted to share with you in the ways in which journaling has helped me find more calm and peace is through a little process called compost and cauldron. So you can do this at the end of every day or at the end of every week, or maybe even at the end of the year if you want to look back, depending on what your time allows. Compost are the things you want to release, let go of. Cauldron are the things that you want to add to the bubbling brew that is your life, to enrich your life, to add more depth, texture, and flavor. For me, what I want to compost this week is my anxiety, which can often catastrophize, imagine challenges that I've yet to face. When my anxiety takes hold, it means that I forget that I've had rich life experiences and a whole lot of resourcefulness to navigate them. So that is something that I will lovingly throw on my compost pile this week. As for my cauldron, I'm adding to it my determination to start anew since returning home from my 4-week vacation in the United States, and understanding that I can navigate new beginnings with joy and intention. So, again, that's something that takes no more than 5 minutes for me to write, but it's a way in which I get to recognize and honor what I have survived in the past day, in the past week or year, and really step forward into the next day, week, or year with deliberation and calm. So, thank you for joining me today as I share with you the small ways, the small daily habits, rituals, and practices that I have used and refined over the past year in order to create more ease, time, and energy in my busy daily life as a full-time working mom. I hope that some of those ideas have been helpful. And as always, if you have ideas about how you create more space, more time in your life with your journaling and planning practices, I would love to hear them in the comment section of this video. I love how this community has become a place in which we can learn from one another. And so many of these practices wouldn't exist, such as the Alastair Method in my work planner, if it wasn't for all of you. Thank you for being here, and I wish you all a very peaceful week ahead. See you in my next video. Bye-bye.